Welcome, everybody.
Welcome,
Give you a
welcome.
second or two to roll in here.
Good
Good
afternoon.
morning
Good
if you're on the
morning.
West Coast, or happy lunchtime if you're by Matt.
That's right. Yeah, welcome. Nice way to, what better way to spend your lunch hour with us, right, Peggy?
Right.
Uh,
Or while you're eating your oatmeal and whatever for breakfast.
and tell us on that note, just throw in the chat. Tell us where you're at in the country, and then what college. I mean, because this this is really intended for in college folks, right? So trying to figure out how do we do better next year, and what can we learn from maybe even do better this year, right? You'll learn some things today where it might not be too late to even improve the situation in this year. But yeah, tell us where you are in the country and what
Yeah, where
college you're
your
going to.
child is at school.
Cool. There we go.
Tulane, Elon, Kenyon, Arizona State.
Yeah,
Nice. We got lots of different schools.
yeah, Tulane. Yeah, awesome. Northeastern, beautiful.
Kelly, go Hoosiers! That's where my son graduated. Love it.
Oh, yeah. All right, cool. Well, for those of you that are new to us, if this is your first time tuning in, I'm Matt Carpenter. I'm one of the founders here at College Aid Pro, and our whole deal, everything that we do every day, is try to help make this process number one a little bit more affordable, but just kind of smoother, take some of the agita and stress out of this whole thing, right? You guys are a little bit calloused having gone through it already, right? I think it's harder in high school than in college, where presumably, all right, we're only going working with one college now and things like this. But you're doing the right thing, because oftentimes we can help people figure out mistakes that they made previously that are correctable, and we can be better moving forward. That's the get today, is to just kind of do a crash course and how's this whole thing work. Let's help you understand, to make sure that you did things right, or help you figure out what mistakes you might have made, and how do we make this thing better for next year moving forward. And then we have a really great offer that we're really proud of, that's been new this year for in-college students. It's been a resounding success, called our annual checkup. And we'll talk about that at the end here, but lots to cover before then. So Peggy, if you want to say hi, let's do it.
Yeah. So I'm Peg Keough, the Director of Education here at College Aid Pro. I was just telling Matt, if you've been on our webinars, I usually don't have my little McDonald's supersized fries thing on, but I'm having a little bit of tech issues with my speakers. So anyways, main thing is you guys can all hear me. So yeah, this is, we're delighted to be able to keep guiding you. You might have younger kids, right? And we could definitely support you on that. But with your child that's in college now, or I've seen a few twins, I have twins. So two kids, you're doing two sets of financial aid forms still, potentially talking to the college, appealing. We want to be here for you to support you until you're truly done, right? You're writing that last check. Senior year. So, it's unfortunately it's not something that just stops when your kids get in. It's a process. It's a journey, as I like to say. So that's what we're here for, to serve you guys at at the stage you're at. And we've just had so many people join our webinars, which tells us, hey, people need this. People need this. So we're gonna keep showing up. So let me share my screen here. So for people that don't know us at all, we are College Aid Pro, and this truly is our mission, empowering families to shop smarter for college. And for this group, it's just continue to navigate this process to put your best foot forward financially and with the least amount of stress, within your family, with the colleges, with your child, right? So that's what we're hoping to accomplish. And there we are, the happy couple. Everybody should have received an email. Matt will put a link in the chat. We can tell that a bunch of you have already done this. You might have gotten the email and thought, why would I do this when my child's in college? And I'll tell you. Basically, we created software for families. And a big part of what we're talking about today is, have you been getting a good deal? How do you do the forms correctly? Around the good deal, The only way you know if you're maximizing the discounts and the endowment money you're receiving from the colleges is to know where they're coming from. What do they think you can afford? And if you don't know that, you're not you're not even in the car, let alone the driver's seat, right? They're driving this whole thing and you're kind of at the mercy at what they give you or what they don't. So really, really important to fill that in. We'll set up your free account. You just click get started for free. And we're going to project what you should be getting. You might look at it for the school your child's at and say, we didn't get that. That's a good thing. Let's dig in and see why. Maybe we can help you get that for subsequent years. So definitely take care of that. Link is in the chat so you can do that. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Matt. He's going to give an overview of financial aid because we never want to assume that you guys, you aren't in the weeds like we are, right? So we want to make sure you've got a good overview. Matt's going to go pretty fast, but we want to give you an overview. Oh, and I already answered this one, so a couple housekeepings that we forgot. Please put your questions in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. And yes, this is recorded. You will be getting a recording.
Beautiful. And yeah, like Peg said, I'll go kind of super speed through this. The reason why we think it's still important to either hear this again or get a reminder, or maybe you're hearing it for the first time, is just understand the broader context here and how the more granular things fit in, the FAFSA, the CSS profile, loans, appealing, things like this. So financial aid is any type of discount we're getting from the colleges. Need-based grants, right? Need-based financial aid has everything to do with your family's financial situation. And again, usually grants are associated with these types of discounts. Free money, beautiful thing. But it can change from one year to the next, right? Income goes up, grants can go down, and vice versa. The biggest variable here is what college are we talking about specifically, or I saw a lot of you, multiple colleges, what colleges are we talking about? Merit-based scholarships, these are discounts that are given just based on your student's credentials. And again, how the particular college kind of views your particular student, right? Do they want to give a financial incentive? Something to just flag there is a decent amount of colleges offer merit-based scholarships for in-college students. So make sure that your students are active. They should ping their admissions office to say, hey, do you guys offer any merit-based scholarships for students that are currently enrolled, right? More schools than you think, those exist. You want the students to be the driver there, not mom and dad. Okay. Self-help financial aid. This is financial aid that every single person is entitled to. If you complete the FAFSA, you're guaranteed to get up to $27,000 over the course of 4 years. Now, the huge caveat there is that it is a loan. It is a loan in the student's name. It is an excellent loan, and we'll expand upon that towards the end of the presentation. But self-help financial aid, is it a good thing? Yeah, it has some nice features, right? But it's not free money.
And
Okay,
I'll
Peg.
just add as we're changing slides here, just that what Matt was just talking about for upperclassmen, my son did it, and it might even it's probably even better. He walked into the business school and said, "Do you have any money for upperclassmen?" Yep, apply here. He got 5 grand, right? Not as competitive. This was a Kelly School of Business at IU, and I we have families. I'm sure Matt has stories too. So don't say, hey, that was a freshman year thing. So it might not be Office of Admissions. It might be actually the college or the major, the department that your child is in. So
Great point. Great point. Okay, so need-based financial aid, right? So this is a sticker price, the cost of attendance, right? You guys are all too familiar with how insane these have become, and we're not going in the right direction, of course. Minus the student aid index, okay? SAI, or you guys were used to when it was called EFC, expected family contribution. If that dollar amount, right, and that dollar amount is formulated based on the end results of your FAFSA and or CSS profile, right? If your SAI is less than the cost of attendance, that's the amount of financial need that you are potentially eligible to receive here. That's where you can get really confusing, where you say, hey, my SAI is 20,000 and UC Santa Barbara costs 75,000, but I got nothing outside of the federal direct student loans. That's because the UCs, I'm picking on them, but they're by no means alone. They don't really give need-based financial aid, right? So even though you're eligible, it doesn't mean that you're going to receive any, okay? So some of you, I'm sure, you didn't get any need-based financial aid, or you got very little need-based financial aid. So what can you do to get some discounts, right? Obviously, we want to figure out where we can get scholarships, and we talked about that already. Don't give up on the school that you are currently attending, right? Make sure some of these colleges, in order to be eligible for merit, they require that you do your FAFSA and your CSS profile. Okay. And obviously it's unless we're transferring, probably too late for this right now, but we always want to apply to competing schools. So if you have one that's still in high school and this wasn't something that was top of mind for your one that's currently in college, make sure that we don't make that mistake again, especially if we're not eligible for need. We have to apply to competing colleges so we can leverage these against one another. It's a very, very important strategy when it comes to getting some deeper discounts. And then, of course, we have private scholarships that you guys are going to receive after the fact if you haven't already for in college students. So you'll be getting that as part of the one of the features for registering for this webinar. Okay, so the first thing that we should really be doing, and this is something that you can do now, even if you go back and look at last year's award, is, did you get a fair offer? Like if you did not appeal for additional need or additional merit or both last time, did you get a fair offer? And it is incredibly common that colleges will quote unquote under award families, right? They'll give them less money than technically a family should get because guess what? You're in the dark. How would you know if you got a fair deal from Elon or Tulane or Kenyon or whatever college that your student is attending currently, right? Well, fortunately, we do know, right? That's why Peg said shared, and I shared that link earlier, so you can set up your account and gut check. Did I get a fair offer from the school that my kid is at? And Peggy, I can share quickly here. So for those of you that already created your accounts, right, you probably just got one college in here because that's all that's relevant, or maybe two if you have the two kids. But if you haven't created your account, you want to do that. We're going to ask you some questions, handful of questions. Okay, give us the your kind of highlights from a financial standpoint, and where do you live, who's in the family, and we're going to project. Here's what you should get. Here's what a Boston College says a family that meets your profile should get versus Columbia, versus Tulane, versus UC Santa Barbara, whatever it happens to be. Okay, so you can kind of gut check. How did I do? Right. And then once you get these awards, and you can even do this last year from last year's award, you can actually upload your financial offer. So I can just, take a picture of the offer that I got, from U Chicago, from USC, wherever. And we're also the algorithm, the technology here is going to more specifically tell you what is your chances of appealing successfully here? In other words, did you get a fair offer? So you may very well find that it says, yes, this is what we would expect. Or maybe, you know what, you even got a couple more bucks than we would have expected for your family's profile in the particular college that you're attending. It doesn't mean don't appeal, right? But at least okay, at least that's in line with how this college typically does business. Because again, it's incredibly common that families will get under awarded simply unbeknownst to them. So use this very objective third party that knows what it's talking about here, right? To see, okay, did we get a fair deal? Right. And I'm going to talk about different ways that we appeal, in a bit here after Peggy takes over, but that's where we're going to start.
All right, so let me kick in here. We got a good overview here. So let's get into the nitty-gritty, talk about the FAFSA. This is the when you're submitting the FAFSA this time for your child in college, this is the second year that we're in the new FAFSA. Best thing is that they're doing much better than last year. It's going much smoother, not to say there aren't any hiccups, but much less different, but very much different than last year. So big improvement there. So the key thing, always look for the deadlines, figure out when the upperclassman deadline is. Easier thing for all of you is it's one school you're looking at, unlike when they're seniors in high school, you got to look at all the colleges. So when you get in there, if you've been in there, you've noticed it's all about the 2023 tax year. Remember, there's that prior year. So that all the questions on the FAFSA are going to revolve around that. That's how they're going to calculate. Matt's going to talk about appealing in a few minutes. If your 2024 was much worse, you lost your job or something like that, don't stress. That's when you're going to be appealing. And we'll talk about that high level at the end here. Very important thing to be reaching out to the colleges on. When it comes to the FAFSA, one parent, if you're a divorced or separated family, one biological parent is submitting the FAFSA, and that parent is called the custodial parent. And that definition, this change, so this is the second year that it's in this new format. It's the parent who provides the most financial support on a year look back from when you are literally hitting the submit button. It's not based on calendar year, anything like that. So that gives you some wiggle room, and it doesn't have to be the same. If you have a child who's a freshman in college now, you're submitting forms for sophomore in college year. That doesn't need to be the same custodial parent. If the parent has changed who provides the most financial support, that can change. And so that's huge because you want to put your best foot forward. There's some gray area here. Let me go back. There's deliberate gray area around this. So keep that in mind. You can lean on us if you need help around this. You, of course, always want to be honest when you're submitting this form or the CSS profile, but there's a lot of families where you can strategically do some behind the scenes, like, hey, I'm going to pay a little bit more for this. Boom, I'm now the custodial parent, and that's better. So this is a big planning opportunity when it comes to the FAFSA. So let's look at the flow of the FAFSA. There's going to be the student section, of course. It's your child's FAFSA in essence. And then there's what are called contributors. I pasted this directly from Federal Student Aid. This is their graphic of the flow. There's different sections, much more abbreviated than it was pre-24-25 school year. And then it's a lot of times it's a parent, but a contributor could be somebody that's not a parent as well. The student goes through and does their part. They're going to invite their contributors, the people that need to add to their FAFSA, and then the contributors will go in and do their part. As far as what we recommend, there's several ways that you can do this and it'll work. But instead of confusing you with different ways to do it, we just always tell our audience, okay, have your child with you if you're involved or making that assumption. Start theirs, log in with their FSA ID and password, go through their parts of the FAFSA over here. So personal circumstances, inviting you as the contributor, and then continue to go. Don't hop out, continue to go through, add that one college. And if your child's transferring or something, then it might be more than one. If they're going to go to a different school and they're deciding, and then they can sign. Then you as a contributor go get your invite in your email. And if you don't get it or you don't find it in spam, you can log into your studentaid.gov account and it'll be in there because you'll be linked to your child. And then you do your part of the FAFSA, which you can see is much more abbreviated. And you probably aren't even doing student personal circumstances because you already did it on your child's side on their part. And then you go through and you sign, and then there should be a congratulations, you're done. That's the flow that we recommend. If you've already started as a parent, take a deep breath. It's all good. People have done it that way as well. I'm just planting that seed. It doesn't mean you have to delete and start all over because that's common that parents will go in and start theirs, but you definitely want to go over and start your child's. And again, we're here to help you with all of this. Matt's going to talk about that at the end. This is just reiterating what I said before, really important to emphasize who is the custodial parent. So if you have a deadline, say of February 28th for your child's school, you've got time here. If you're close to 50-50 support, or if one parent is a little bit more, You can sit down and strategize and say, hey, why don't you spend a little more? You have to know, is that going to help you? And that's where being in our software and putting in different scenarios honestly will tell you, hey, that's going to be our student aid index versus if you're the custodial parent, this is our student aid index and we could maybe get some more money. Depends on the school. Like Matt said, UCs aren't great, especially out-of-state kids, of giving any need. So that's where we can come in and be super supportive and say, yeah, for this school, it's not going to make a difference. For this school, it really will. Whatever it is, every family is really, really different. So, but just planting that seed that this is Congress deliberately made this a gray area. So take advantage of it. So who should these contributors be? This can get a little complicated, and let me explain. When you are a contributor and your child is a contributor to their own FAFSA, every contributor is going to consent to having their financial FTI, federal tax information, pulled in from the IRS into the FAFSA. You don't have a choice. If you fall into an exception, the form will let you know and then you'll manually enter it, but you can't choose to manually enter it. If you don't consent, then you don't have a valid FAFSA and you're leaving literally tens of thousands of dollars on the table. So not recommended by us at all. So let's talk about who those contributors are. If you are married and you file married filing jointly, then one of the parents is a contributor. Because remember, you're consenting for that data to move from your tax return. Well, there's only one tax return because you're married filing jointly. So only one person needs to say, yeah, it's okay. I'm telling you it's all right to move my data into my child's FAFSA. So that's one contributor. On the flip side, if you're married, but for whatever reasons you file married filing separately, which means you each have your own tax return, then guess what? You're both contributors because you both have to say for your own tax return, yes, I'm good with you moving my federal tax information into the FAFSA as a contributor. So you both have to do it. If you're married filing, if you're married, sorry guys, if you're divorced or separated, remember only that custodial parent is contributing in any way, sharing their data. The non-custodial parent, the other biological parent, is not involved in the FAFSA at all. So only the custodial parent is going to get that FSA ID. If you are remarried, your new spouse doesn't get an ID. You're married filing jointly, then it takes care of both. If for some reason you're remarried and you're married filing separately, then of course, yeah, you both need to get it because if you remarry, that's the household. So both, even though that's a step parent or non-biological parent in the household, still in financial aid, that's considered the family. So you both have to be in there. So hopefully that clarifies who are the contributors. Any contributor needs to get the FSA ID and password to get in and do their part of the FAFSA. When you give consent for this data to move, you do it annually. So once you do it, you can't say, I decided against it. Once you do it, can't be revoked, but it is done every year. So you can make your decisions. So let's talk about some overarching tips. These are mistakes that we see people make all the time. So we want to go over this. First thing, they are going to ask most families about your assets. You are only reporting non-retirement assets on the FAFSA. So 401ks, 403bs, Roth IRAs, regular IRAs, pensions, those balances are all retirement accounts. Do not put that in when they ask for the net worth of investments. If you own your home that you live in, that real estate is off the table. The equity in your real estate, meaning the market value minus your loan or loans, not on the table. So for many families, if you're fortunate enough to own your home, that's the only real estate you have. So real estate would not be part of it. When it comes to 529 accounts, again, if you've been fortunate enough and able to save specifically for your kids' college in different IRS vehicles, the most popular being a 529, what you are going to put on the FAFSA is the balance only in the student that you're submitting the FAFSA for, only for that child. Like in my case, I had twins. I'm only putting Shannon's on her FAFSA and I'm only putting Brennan's balance on his. And I'm only putting it if me or my husband were the owner of the 529. That's the most common way within a family to set it up. But grandma and grandpa, they own a lot of 529s, not even included. That person is not in the household. So only parent owned 529s and only the one for the child that you're submitting the FAFSA for. These are new changes as far as the not including all the siblings. If there's a question about work study, just click yes. It's not obligating you. If you're eligible, which you may not be, it gives you that option on the table. Number 5, the student aid index that you've heard Matt and I both mention, that, and you're going to see it in our software right on the top of your dashboard, 2 of them. That doesn't mean that's what you're going to pay. It's not a bill like, oh, it says 20,000, I'm going to pay 20,000. No, if only it were that easy. That's just the starting point of what the colleges think you can afford. So this is where the understanding financial aid and where you fit really, really matters. When it comes to your business, if you're a business owner or you have other real estate that's not the home you live in, that is on the table. That there's a specific question about the value of your business, and the real estate is part of the net worth of investments question. So to get the value of your business, you have to figure it out. Don't overvalue either one of these. Of course, you're going to be honest. You're not going to lie. But I will tell you, some businesses, my business before I was acquired by Cap and joined Cap, if I got hit by a bus, it didn't have any resale value. It was me. It was my brain. It was me. That's what I was selling. And that's common for certain businesses, whereas other businesses might have a value. So lean on us for that too. Some people think if I put 0, I'm lying. That's not necessarily the case. And then with real estate, you want to make sure you're not overvaluing that as well when you figure out the market value. It's not the market value that you want to sell it for 10 years from now when you stage it and wait for the best offer. It's the lowest defensible value. And then you can actually discount it from there. So don't overvalue. And as I said earlier, make sure you look up that deadline for your child's school, because even as an upperclassman, if you miss the deadlines, you will potentially lose need-based aid that if applicable, you got the year before. And I've seen it happen several times. And that was the problem in and of itself. They just missed a deadline. So look those up. So CSS profile. This is the second form. I answered a question earlier during our webinar. Somebody said, my school doesn't require that for after the first year. Is that right? If that's what they're telling you, it's right. But that's a school by school decision. Some schools require it every year. Some just want it for freshman year. And then you're always submitting the FAFSA ongoing, and they might ask you for other documentation if they need it. So just see what the college requires. So CSS profile, key differences here. If you've done it, you guys have upperclassmen, you know this is a much longer form. Most of the time, they are looking at both parents in a divorced or separated family. So the non-custodial parent is submitting what's called a non-custodial profile. Again, the custodial parent definition is part of the CSS as well. So it's the new definition. The CSS needs to match the FAFSA. You can't have different custodial parents for the same school year that you're submitting. So they need to match. Keep in mind, there is something called a non-custodial waiver. So if for some reason the non-custodial parent, it's not healthy for the child to be communicating emotionally, physically not healthy, the parent is off the grid. There's several different scenarios. The colleges will entertain what's called a non-custodial waiver. So if you didn't know about that last year, but that is true for your family, we can help you with that. You have to submit that to the college. It doesn't go through the CSS profile. They do have a form that the college may or may not use. They might have their own waiver, but you're going to want to submit that and explain why that other parent is not going to be submitting. And that's a big deal because they require both biological parents and you don't submit it, it's just not a valid application for financial aid. And you could be leaving a lot of money on the table if a waiver is applicable. And sometimes the other parent just needs to understand that. So, and we can step in and help with this. Home equity in your primary home, as well as other real estate, is on the table. So different than the FAFSA, that home you live in, if you own it or you own most of it, the bank owns some of it, you're going to have to report on that. And as you guys know, it's a much longer form. You don't need, you just log in with your child's credentials. And one of the pros on our team, one of our experts says, like the stats show 3 out of 4 families fill this out wrong because it's a lot. It's overwhelming, and we can step in and make sure you get it done correctly with the least amount of stress. So, a few tips here before I turn it back to Matt. On the CSS profile, unlike the FAFSA, they mark questions as required. So that means the other questions are not required. I'm not telling you never fill out a not required question. There's some strategy here and there where you might, but I am telling you don't feel like you have to answer every question. And sometimes you shouldn't answer some of the not required questions. So I'm just planting that seed. Just like I said with the FAFSA, with real estate and with the CSS, it's your primary home as well as other real estate. Do not overvalue your real estate. Be honest, but don't overvalue. 529 accounts. It's a little bit different. It is different on the CSS. It isn't different that an asset owned, that the 529 owned by the parent goes under the parent investments. And the reason why I keep stressing that is student assets are assessed at 20 or 25%, and parent assets are assessed at much, much less. So that's a huge mistake that can shoot up your student aid index. So make sure if it's parent owned, goes under your investments. Remember, grandma, grandpa, anybody else does not go under that question. Okay. But on the CSS, they ask you to tell the balance in all of your kids' 529s. So it's not just the student that you're filling out the CSS for, not just that child. They have allowances where they're taking into account that you have so many kids. But I will say, if you've been fortunate enough to save nice chunks of money for your younger kids or a child that's in college, you absolutely can let the college know and appeal on that if it's a relatively large number. Um, on the CSS, number 4 is a huge one. They ask a question. It's in the student section and it says, how much can your parents contribute for the 25-26 school year? And that's a big one. You can answer this question and it can hurt you. It's not a help you question, but it can hurt you. One thing I will say across the board is you've got to know your student aid index. Again, I know I keep saying this, but it's very important because if you put a number higher than that, that's now what the college is going to expect you to pay. And that's the last thing you want to do. They think you can afford 40,000 and you put 45,000 there, you've now upped your bill by $5,000. So you want to be very strategic how you answer that question. The CSS also asks for future earnings, unlike the FAFSA. Again, don't overestimate your 2025 earnings. You don't know what's going to happen. Put the bare minimum that you think you're going to make, not with bonuses. 2024, you pretty much know because we're in 25. Obviously, they ask about both 24 and 25. And then there is a special circumstances section at the end of the CSS. Don't put your appeal in there. Somebody already wrote and said, hey, our situation's different in 2024. That's something you're going to want to share, but keep it in your back pocket. And Matt's going to talk about appeals in 1 second here. You want to save it. If you spill your guts on the CSS and then you get a package and you're like, doesn't even seem like they took that into account. And you reach out and they say, yeah, we saw that. You're not in as good a place to have a strategic conversation with them. It's much better to say, hey, thank you. And let me tell you what happened in 2024. And then you're forcing them to go back and change things or make the decision if they're going to change things or not. So we strongly recommend that you leave that blank. And then of course, same as everything in this process. Don't miss the deadlines because you're doing all this great work and appealing, and you're just kicking yourself in the foot if you do that. So, all right, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Matt, to touch on appeals here.
Yeah, and it's a good segue because that last point that Peggy, or the second to last point that Peggy just brought to your attention there, that's really inside baseball stuff. And is only relevant to colleges that require the CSS profile, but it's not showing our hand up front. We want them to package us, right, our student first based on just the numbers, the bare minimum that we kind of show them on the FAFSA and the CSS profile. And then we're going to bring new information to them after the fact. And these are just kind of some best practices in terms of how to appeal. But I want to kind of talk through a couple things before I spend a minute on these bullet points here. The first one is, if you did not appeal going into this year, it's not necessarily too late, especially for the spring semester, right? So if you're just kind of hearing some of this stuff at the same time, be like, oh my goodness, I put my retirement account on the FAFSA, or I definitely way overvalued my business or my property or whatever it happens to be. It's not too late. Now, I want to set expectations. You're up against it, right? I'm a little bit pessimistic. However, and I can tell you, firsthand experience, we still have successful appeals even this late in the game. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. And at a minimum, right? At a minimum, even if we don't get a refund check for X amount of dollars for the spring semester, we're kind of setting a foundation for next year, right? So again, yeah, maybe we didn't get a refund check, but the precedent has been set, and we're kind of very visible with this admissions and/or financial aid office at this college, and oftentimes that can be kind of a stepping stone, a catapult to getting a better deal for next year, right? We want to make this easy on these folks. We want to spoon feed them. So yes, there's an emotional piece here, right? And you want to make sure that they understand the best day of your lives was when you got the acceptance letter. The worst day was when you get the financial offer, right? If you didn't have this conversation with them already, again, have it now. It's not too late since already in college. We want to ask for a particular dollar amount, right? $10,000 more, and we're going to be able to keep our kid at college. We're not going to have to transfer. Okay. Obviously, unless you're transferring, this next bullet point here in terms of showing competing offers is probably not relevant. But you also want us to talk about, actually, Peg and I just did a podcast before this webinar, and one of the things that we flagged there is that we're seeing more colleges this year. Okay. It's not like it's brand new, but I'm seeing more of a pattern here of colleges are almost ignoring what you're putting on the financial aid applications in terms of assets, checking savings, maybe how you value your home, and making their own assumptions. And we've seen a ton of cases where they are assuming that we have more money than we actually do, right? And how do we get to the bottom of that? We ask it point blank. I wrote down X amount on the FAFSA and the CSS profile because that's what was in my bank account at the time. What did you have, right? How did you come up with my SAI? This is the information we want. And because the more ammunition we have, or the more information we have, right, gives us hopefully more opportunities to go back and get a better deal. Another thing that I'll tell you quickly is that if we are asking for more scholarship dollars, okay, just like Peg gave that anecdote with her son, at the beginning, the student should be leading that conversation. Okay, the college wants to hear directly from the student because that's who they're investing in, right, with these scholarship dollars. Okay, usually that happens with the admissions office, but to Peg's point, that could happen within a particular major, or again, you're on the business track. Go to the business school. You're in the art department. Go talk to the director, right, in the art department. If it's a financial aid appeal, if it's a need-based appeal, right? So we're talking about how we valued our business, our home, maybe it's a split household divorce situation. This makes sense where the parent is the leading the charge here, and we're having that conversation with the financial aid office. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are barking up the right tree, so to speak, because I will tell you in terms of gauging the likelihood of success or lack thereof an appeal, the more sophisticated we are, the more likely we are to have a successful appeal. So we got to do some of these quote unquote obvious things right, because if we're just asking for more money, kind of randomly and in the wrong spot, we're very unlikely to have success here. All right, Peggy, I think so. I had hit on this earlier, and I kind of had said, maybe somewhat in passing, but the everybody that completes the FAFSA is guaranteed to get this $27,000 over the course of 4 years, and you can see the breakdown by year, okay, in a federal direct student loan. Any family that needs to borrow, or maybe you don't even need to borrow, but you want your kids to have some skin in the game, this is where you start. That is one universal recommendation we can make, and it's very incredibly rare we make universal recommendations. It's generally not a one size fits all here. But anybody that needs to borrow, wants to borrow, etc., they start here, right? This loan is just in the student's name. They're not going to get a bill until 6 months after they graduate from college. They don't need established credit. They don't need a cosigner. Incredibly flexible repayment terms. We're not crazy about the rate right now. It's the highest it's been in many, many years. But all the pros with this loan really outweigh in just about every case the cons in terms of the rate itself. And the other thing here is that maybe you're looking at this going, yeah, I don't want my kid to borrow. I don't need my kid to borrow. Well, I mean, that's good on you if you're fortunate enough to be in that situation. But even for those families that are, I say, well, why don't you take advantage of it, pay it back on their behalf, and guess what? They graduate with established credit. So as 22-year-olds, they're going to have a 780 score because as far as kind of the system is concerned, just they borrowed this $27,000 and paid it off on their own. It doesn't matter who actually was pulling the strings there. So again, sorry, last thing I'll mention here, let's just say you didn't take advantage of that this year. It's not too late. And you actually will get a refund check, at least for the spring semester. Some colleges will retroactively let you borrow for freshman year too, not all of them, right? So you get to see what your college will do. But if you didn't use this year and you're listening to this going, that's interesting, you can at least still use it for the spring semester. And again, you'll get a refund check for whatever you already paid towards your second semester bill, assuming that you did already. And I guess assuming that you're on semesters. Yeah, and I don't think anything, these are just some bullet points in terms of how to actually execute the loan. But the first things first, you got to complete the FAFSA, and then the student completes a couple steps online, and actually, in order for that money to actually change hands here. Okay, Peggy. So this is, and I'll give you another visual, another way of looking at this, but for families that are still thinking about whether you need to borrow for this year, or kind of looking ahead to next year, this is generally how we coach it, right? If you need to get some type of educational loan, we start at the federal direct student loan. Then we recommend that you try one or two private lenders, right? These are a couple of the lenders. Now, these private lenders change all the time, especially in the summertime, which is kind of the main or the most common time to borrow for college. Weekly, they will, as they compete with one another, they will change repayment terms, they will change rates, they will change everything as they try to earn business, right? So most recently, these have been three of the lenders that are, again, among the more competitive ones. So we always recommend try one of these two to see what rates and repayment terms you get. Now, I will caveat this. People that are borrowing just for the second semester, we see a big inflation in rates from these private lenders. I don't know this, okay? I do not know this, but just staring at it, I think that they know they have some extra leverage here because you kind of need this money, whatever. And so these rates have been inflated higher than I see them, and again, in more common borrow season. But see what you qualify for. And then we want you to compare that to the PLUS loan. That's the federal government program. High rate, 9%, plus a high initiation fee, 4%. So effectively, that's 10%. Now, we had a couple people write in to say, hey, I didn't qualify for any of the private loans. One nice thing about the federal PLUS loan is that they are by far the most lenient in terms of their qualification requirements. No income requirements, the quote unquote easiest when it comes to credit score requirements. So even though the rate is very high, there are some good features in the sense that number one, it's easier to qualify for. Number two, they also offer the most flexibility in terms of repayment terms, longest repayment term, and some other features that most private lenders do not offer. And then the other thing we recommend that you take a look at is that about half the states in the country, they have lending programs, and you can use them if you're a resident of the state or if your kid goes to school in that state. Okay, so for example, Vermont has a pretty competitive lending program. And let's just say you're a resident of Texas, but your kid goes to Middlebury. Well, guess what? You can borrow through Vermont's program. They're called VSAC. But you can only use that if you live in Vermont, your kid goes in Vermont. Okay. Now, these three lenders that we're flagging down here, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Iowa, of all places, these are the only three states where you can borrow through these state programs, regardless of where your kid goes to school, regardless of where you live. So you can be a Washington resident like Peggy, and your kid could go to, Florida State. Guess what? You can borrow through Iowa. Okay, so this is how you do your homework, right? So go see what you're going to get in the private sector, compare that to the federal option, and then again look at your state's program or where your kids are going to school. If neither of those states have options, you can check out these three. So that is what we consider to be our best practice in terms of doing homework and helping you arrive at what is going to be the best option in all likelihood for your family. Was that the last slide there, Peggy?
Hold on, I believe so.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
because I want to show you now. We had teased this at the beginning because we really like what we've been doing with families here, and we're calling it kind of our annual checkup. Okay, and here's what we do for you. Number one, if you didn't enjoy doing your financial aid applications, we do those for you. So that means the FAFSA, if it's applicable, the CSS profile. Some CSS profile schools only require it freshman year. Some schools need it all 4 years. If it's a Princeton or a University of Chicago that has their own financial aid applications, we take care of those. So we'll do the financial aid application for you, but that's kind of half the battle. We want to review last year's offer. Did we get a good deal? Did we make some correctable mistakes on the FAFSA or the CSS profile? Did we choose the right loan? What loan should we use this year? So we really just kind of want to pause on, and take a good look at where you are right now. That's why this, again, kind of annual checkup, tune up, wherever you want to call it. Are we as in good a shape as we can possibly be? Usually the answer is no. Okay. I'm not saying some people didn't absolutely nail it and were perfect last year. I'm sure they were, but usually we can get in here and go, okay, here's some adjustments we can make on the FAFSA or profile. It's going to put us in a better position. Here's our appeal strategy. Okay, use the plus loan this year. Did you know that Rhode Island's 2.5% less interest? Maybe you have some questions on your 529. Should we exhaust it all up front? Does it make sense to spread out? Grandparents are contributing. What do we need to think about there? And obviously any other questions you have. So I think this is a really powerful deliverable. Generally speaking, we charge $500 for it. If you decide to opt in today, it's 20% off, so you get $100 off. So for $400, you're going to get all of this: financial aid applications and just one-on-one guidance from our experts on, again, assessing where you're at currently, what last year looked like, and just firm recommendations with the go forward plan. So let's see, FAFSA 20 is the coupon code. So all you're going to do here, guys, just do this right now. Don't overthink this one, right? So and again, you're only going to get the $100 off today. So you say just get started today, and then you're going to add your promotional code here, FAFSA 20. All right, you're going to apply it. Assuming it works. Looks like my computer's being slow for a second, but it always works, so I'm sure it will. It's going to show us $100 off, and then we're going to check out. As soon as you do that, you're going to hear from, well, let's make sure that it is working. FAFSA 20. Jara, can you do me a favor, buddy, and make sure that the FAFSA 20 coupon code is live for the checkup?
Here, I'll check it real quick.
Yeah, thanks. So maybe, there it is. There it is.
Yep, mine just worked.
Yep. So something weird happened there, but there's our $99.80 off. Thank you, Jara. And yeah, so it looks like that was a me thing apparently. But So sign up for this right now. Then you'll hear from our team to say, okay, here's the information that we need from you in order to be able to execute, and then we'll find a time that works with your calendar, and we're off to the races. And more often than not, again, yes, we're gonna save you some headache and some bullshit of having to do the forms and all that again, but we're very likely going to be able to save you some money here. If you have more than one kid, guys, if you have more than one kid, the second kid is another $300. Okay. So what'll happen is you'll sign up for one, you'll onboard, and then we'll invoice you an additional $300 for the second kid, whether they're different grades or twins or whatever. It doesn't matter, but that's how that works. Some parents, what they'll do is they'll say, hey, let me just sign up for the one and then I'll poach what you did for that one and use it for the second kid myself, but that's up to you. But if you want us to take over for both of them completely, that's how it works. So
And yes, we will talk to you about the FAFs, I mean, the appeals. So that is part of it.
that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, even if you've already submitted the FAFSA this year, guys, it is not too late for us to provide value here because again, number one, we're going to get our eyes on that thing. We're going to gut check it. We're going to look at last year's deal. Then we're going to talk about how do we appeal for more money this year and or next year, and then again, ultimately, how do we get smart about paying for it? But 100%. Okay. All right. Peggy, anything else before we sign off here? Did I miss anything?
Nope. If you already submitted the FAFSA, we can go in and make sure, that you did it right. So we'll be able to just do whatever you need to make you feel confident for your submission for the next year. And as Matt said, even look at last year and just get a feel for what's going on. Just in case if you were kind of flying blind the first year, which I'm not saying that critically at all. For a lot of people, they're just trying to get it done, just trying to get through. We can kind of put some sanity to it and look through it for you. Just give you a gut check, give you, like we call it, your checkup basically. And the FAFSAs it depends on your child's school. So for upperclassmen, it's usually a little later because they're more focused on filling their freshman class and getting those awards out. So I can't say all of your kids' schools the deadline, but we're only in January. Don't you agree, Matt? Usually it's like March,
Yeah,
February. So you have time for us to get in and help you for sure.
the most common deadline is March 1st, but again, it's like to Peg's point, very much school specific. So you got to go look at your college or colleges for returning students. Don't get freaked out when you see a November 1st deadline. That's definitely going to be for incoming freshmen, right? But for returning students, usually that's a later deadline, but go make sure.
Yeah, just look at that nuance. And yes, you can always appeal for more financial aid. And you could fall into a situation where you should have appealed last year and no promises, but we might be able to explain to you why and help you reach out for this current semester. We can't promise it, but some people had real grounds for appeal and you just didn't know. There's a lot to keep track of. So,
All right, Peggy, appreciate you, buddy.
all right,
Appreciate everybody
everybody.
tuning in. You know where to find us for more questions. And again, yeah, just make sure you sign up today, take advantage of that coupon code, and let's get a better deal for next year.
All right, have a good one, everybody.